Ladies and gentlemen, I'm honored to speak to you on the occasion of your summit. To effectively address global climate change, drastic reductions of greenhouse gas emissions are needed in all sectors. As Executive Secretary of the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change, I put international aviation high on the Secretariat's agenda. It is both an important sector for the global economy and a significant contributor to the emissions that cause global climate change. Your sector accounts for some 2% of global emissions from human activity, and if left unchecked, it will have further impacts on the climate. The world will continue to need a strong aviation industry, but the high-flying plane must also be a symbol of proactive action to address climate change. In 2007, the aviation industry, as well as the ICAO General Assembly, adopted a strategy to reduce the sector's impact on global climate change. The strategy is based on 4 pillars: improved technology, effective operational practices, efficient infrastructure, and the development of positive economic measures. In 2008, the international aviation community also signed a strategy to adopt an ambitious set of global targets. Starting in 2009, it committed to carbon-neutral growth by 2020 and a 50% reduction in carbon emissions by 2050 relative to 2005 levels. Your sector has been proactive, and I welcome that. But we face major challenges, and the aviation sector holds some critical keys to help governments further reduce the climate threat. The 2007 Bali Action Plan, under the climate negotiations, introduced the consideration of cooperative sectoral approaches and sector-specific actions for enhancing national and international action to reduce emissions. In this context, governments in the climate talks are discussing how to integrate international aviation and maritime transport into an agreement to be negotiated in Cancun at the end of this year. Government proposals include clarifying principles that should guide this work, setting sectoral targets, working through ICAO to achieve that, and defining the possible use of revenues from market-based measures. The next few months are of prime importance to the future of comprehensive climate change actions within the aviation sector and the world as a whole. To address climate change effectively, a comprehensive global approach is needed that ensures aviation continues to deliver social and economic benefits while avoiding a patchwork of conflicting and potentially overlapping national and regional policies which would adversely affect the industry. The aviation community could help governments under ICAO to develop and adopt a global sectoral approach that takes into account the sector's unique features. It is vital that ICAO and the UNFCCC meet the challenge of climate change in a complementary fashion. It's important to remember the distinction between national and international aviation transport. The IPCC stipulates that emissions from domestic and international transport are to be handled differently. Emissions from domestic activities form part of parties' total national emissions and are addressed under the UNFCCC according to the principle of common but differentiated responsibility. On the other hand, goals and targets set by ICAO refer to international aviation emissions and would be managed according to the ICAO's principle of equal treatment for airlines. Reconciling those two principles needs political leadership, but also innovative thinking from the industry. But time is not on our side. To address global climate change effectively, we also need to see significant emission reductions before 2020. The development of a global framework for market-based measures in international aviation could close that gap. Market-based measures can regulate greenhouse gas emissions from aviation in a cost-effective and non-discriminatory way while achieving environmental targets and improving the sector's ability to invest in further emission reduction technology, operations, and infrastructure. Using a fair and appropriate share of the revenues generated by such measures to assist developing countries in addressing climate change would be in line with the provisions of the UNFCCC. Ladies and gentlemen, I encourage you to send a strong signal to the 37th session of the ICAO Assembly to develop and strengthen the role of market-based measures. By doing so, aviation can underline its leading role in addressing global climate change and will remain and inspirational symbol of human achievement. Thank you.